So, hello everyone, hello to the ones who are there in the classroom and hello to the ones who are watching this session online. So, up till previous session we completed the idea of evolution and the philosophical and constitutional framework. Today I am going to take up the union and state administration aspect. And I am going to take them together because there are certain themes which dominate these particular units, right? And therefore, we will have to see them from the lens of administration. However, if you have any queries, you can just quickly ask them before I proceed to the next session, next topic. Why I am taking them together, there is another reason, because things are interdisciplinary. With regards to these two units, there are a lot of similarities. Also, these are the units which are heavy when it comes to their weightage or the way they have been asked over the years. Right? They draw heavily from the polity, but we need to glaze that polity nature with certain administrative aspects, and I'll be talking about them as well. Okay, so it is important that we keep that administration orientation alive while we express ourselves in the examination. Okay, if you will see the units, you will find that in terms of the union government and administration, state government and administration, they are largely looking at the polity elements: executive, judiciary, functions, intergovernmental relations, central secretariat, ministries, departments, and you will be using the knowledge of polity as in the articles of the constitution, right? However, those things are just the support, like I said, but we will have to involve the administrative aspects. So I'll be dealing with them in a fused manner so that we get a holistic understanding. So I believe there are no queries from the previous session, so let us proceed. First, I'll be looking at the union government aspect, and through the PYQs like we have been doing, we'll look at this. Dominant central administration is correlated with decisive and authoritative leadership provided by the PMO. Now there are three keywords: centralized admin, leadership, PMO. Explain with suitable examples since independence. So in 2016 it was of 60 marks, the unit. What factors have led to the expansion of the role of Ministry of Home Affairs? How can it be a coordinator of its affairs more effectively with Ministry of Defense? So ministry coordination aspect is there. Okay, vis-a-vis MOD and MHA. Next, the absence of the congruence of views on appointments of judiciary between Supreme Court and Union government has had an adverse impact on the judicial system. In the light of the above, examine the proposal to constitute an All India Judicial Service. So, All India Judicial Service, judicial reforms and the current functioning vis-a-vis executive. Now you see, this was in 2016. 2017, again it was 50 marks. The status and functioning of the Cabinet Secretariat face a stiff challenge from the PMO. Argue both in favor and against. So the cabinet secretariat. Do you agree? Again 2017, All India Judicial Service would contribute to the timely delivery of justice to the citizens. Okay. Next, proactive governance and timely implementation. Pragati is an innovative project of the union government. So something related to project, scheme, program. Pragati. Next, discuss with suitable example the challenges faced by the regulatory commissions as an arbitrary agents between the state and the market forces. So, you have the regulatory authorities, something that we have done in paper 1, but this is asking in relation to paper 2. Okay. Next again, 2018 Cabinet Secretariat. The attached offices and subordinate offices are integral to the functioning of the Cabinet Secretariat. Next, judicial overreach to a large extent is a consequence of ineffective executive. Again, the judiciary, judicial reforms and the current functioning vis-a-vis executive. This is the theme which is coming up again. Next, strong PMO is an antithesis of the feature of collective responsibility of Council of Ministers. Examine the issue in relation to the PMO vis-a-vis Council of Ministers. So again PMO, the one we saw earlier was a positive aspect, leadership, decisive nature, etc. Now this is pointing out to the negative characteristic vis-a-vis the Council of Ministers. Next, parliamentary committees are the deliberative core of parliamentary work, which is crucial for the legislation. So the parliamentary committee system. Next, the spirit of democratic values that require independence of judiciary remains absolute. It is high time that All India Judicial Service was created. Elaborate. So All India Judicial Service coming 3 times, and this is just I have reached 2020. To strengthen the Election Commission of India and its commissioners is the need of the hour. Suggest measures. So again, the board and commissions heading, Election Commission of India. Okay. Next, the role and status of the speaker in parliamentary system have their foundation in the speaker's stance on neutrality. So again, parliament, earlier committee was there, now you have the speaker. Next, PMO has become a powerful institution in itself by virtue of its role in decision making on strategic issues of utmost importance. Similar question on PMO. Budget proposals in the Parliament, state legislature failed to ensure their effective scrutiny. The factors which constrain the effective scrutiny of the budgets. So again, the Parliament in relation to budget. Next, smooth transaction of business in ministries and departments depend on the role played by the Cabinet Secretariat. The Indian judicial system has failed to deliver justice expeditiously. Examine the challenges faced by the judiciary and suggest measures. So, a generic question on the judicial reforms again. Parliamentary control over administration is no substitute for judicial control. So, taking a leaf from the unit of accountability and control, paper 1. Again, judiciary is highlighted. 91st Constitutional Amendment Act successfully right-sized the Council of Ministers. So again, the COM aspect vis-a-vis constitutional amendment. Next, Indian Prime Minister is more empowered than his British counterpart. Okay, so another new dimension which is coming up is comparative, where PM has been compared, let us say, India and UK. Next, former Chief Justice of India Deepak Misra observed, an efficient judiciary is the hallmark of the great nation. Simple statement, again the judiciary. Now, if I look at this aspect, you will see that the pub addish elements which are coming to the fore, have a look. Centralized administration, leadership, coordination. These are the phenomena. Now, institutions, PMO. Okay, just wait. Institutions, PMO, ministries, Council of Ministers, Cabinet Secretariat, Election Commission of India, right? Phenomena like budget, speaker, committee system, and this comparative sense. So these are the highlight, or should I say the hero areas that we need to focus from this unit. Okay. And you saw that how PMO, Cabinet Secretariat, right? PMO, Cabinet Secretariat, All India Judicial Service, 3 ticks here, 3 ticks here. Okay, all of them are coming through again and again and again, and largely the content remains the same. It is the context which changes. So with the same content, molding it as per the context, you can write answers and you can score marks. Like I said, you will need the help of Indian polity, articles of the Constitution. Of course, I hope it is understood that I am not going to teach you from scratch that this is the Prime Minister and all of stuff. I am not going to get into it. Right? I hope you have made the note of it. Now, coming to the state administration part, and I will be dealing with them simultaneously, juxtaposing them. And then you will see that how things are linked and related. Even in these questions, it is all looking at administration. All India Judicial Service for better judicial administration. Tussle with the executive. Or administrative reforms or structural functional reforms like Pragati. Or a generic question based on the regulatory authorities, things that we can take from units like accountability and control, organizations, etc. as it is. The conceptual logic will be taken as it is, just superimpose with the knowledge or the information with regards to India, take an Indian example and you are done. Okay. Now, with regards to the state administration, examine the efficacy of the measures taken to redefine and execute cooperative federalism. So you have issues of federalism. Of lately we see cooperative, competitive, what else? cooperative federalism, competitive federalism and combative federalism which is emerging. Look at the recent refusal by certain chief ministers to attend the meeting of Niti Aayog. Against, they are showing a sort of a disenchantment with the center. Or with regards to, in the past we have seen how certain officials were transferred by the Union Home Ministry, but they were never given the sanction to join the Union report to Delhi. Right? Or the issue of the general consent of the CBI. So remember, heavy quotage of examples is needed, and those examples should be contemporary in nature. Also, just to draw a point, this comparative aspect between the Indian Prime Minister and the Prime Minister in UK has been drawn. This time it was Prime Minister. Right? Can it be the US Supreme Court versus Indian Supreme Court? Right? Or the speaker in UK and India? Right? Or the President of France and PM of India? Because you see, we are not in the business of predicting the examination. We are in the business of preparing for it. But the idea is that current affairs were full of these things. There was a row which was going on, or a sort of a tension which was going on between the union executive and the opposition parties on the post of the speaker. Now here, if they can ask committees, they can also ask the role of So this, I am trying to create a checklist for you that you incorporate these things in revision. Teaching these things from scratch is not the mandate of this class, nor it is the requirement at which we are at this instant. You have already read all these things. It is just to polish the perspective that I am talking about. Next, legislatures have become a place for infighting rather than the proper policy making. Comment in the context of the working of state government. State legislature. Isn't it similar to the parliament? Can this question be changed just by replacing the word state governments and come the union government? So all your idea of walkouts, but how it impacts the administration. All your ideas of din in the houses, the resort culture. Resort culture, you understand? Where the MLAs are huddled into a resort. Right? Why am I saying this? Because of lately we have seen a lot of upheavals in the states like Maharashtra, Karnataka, for that matter, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan. We have seen that. But the question will not be current affairs. Question will be based on the concept which is at the heart of those current affairs. Next, the position of Council of the Ministers in the states is reduced to that of a body of secretaries in the presence of dominating chief minister. Critically analyze. So just like we see PM, PMO and Council of Minister, you have the CM and the Council of Ministers. Chief Secretary is often termed as the alter ego of the Chief Minister. Discuss with examples the dynamics of their relationship with the state administration. So often we see that this Chief Secretary is considered an analogous in the union vis-a-vis Cabinet Secretary. Right? Next, something which can be clubbed in financial management as well, but I have put that question in here. Implementation of the GST has led to a paradigm shift in the center-state relations, both financially and politically. Again, the federalism aspect, center-state relations, emphasized again. Next, critically examine the criteria adopted by the 15th Finance Commission for the allocation of resources to states. What have been the major issues of contentions since the 10th Finance Commission? So again, institution of Finance Commission. Next, in the coalition era with an elusive majority of a single party in state legislature, the role of governor becomes more challenging. Two things: coalition and governor. So, the office of governor. My whole point of giving you this is that if you prepare 150 words notes from your existing notes, in the light of these PYQs, 150 to 200 words on each of them, your 70 to 80 marks in paper 2 are sealed. Okay, so the office of governor, and I hope you understand that you will not have to put very detailed information. For example, all of you would know Article 365, Article 356, etc. Right? Because you are studying polity as well. It is just you will have to translate it into administration. Okay, so the office of governor and the coalition era. Coalition is something which nobody is stopping you, especially in the light of contemporary developments, from being asked here. Yes or no? It can be asked here. Present regime is a coalition regime. Right? Recently the budget was out and it was said that it was a coalition budget. Okay. Next. Various committees have reiterated the crucial role of governor in the Indian system of governance, but the successive governments have not heeded to make governor's office apolitical. So again, emphasizing on the role of the governor's office, its independence, its autonomy, the whole center of state argument, center's agent argument. Next, Article 356 acts very much like the proverbial bolt from the blue, without giving an opportunity or notice to the state government to correct its alleged shortcoming. The phenomena not only undermines the autonomy of the state government, but also demeans the status of the President of India. Critically analyze. So the role of Article 356, again the President's rule. The governor comes here and it links to the President, the emergency powers, etc. Of lately, if you will see past 10-11 years, this has not been utilized. Largely it has not been utilized. Yes, the status of Jammu and Kashmir changed. That was a different, that was in a different direction. Right. Next is efforts to strengthen state finance commissions have faced apathy of the state governments over the years, which has also affected the successive central finance commissions in recommending appropriate fiscal transfer to local bodies. Now understand, this question is particularly transcending the center state local dimensions, where on one hand you have the state finance commission and the resultant is being talked to Union Finance Commission. Now, look at the language of the question. Efforts to strengthen the SFCs have faced apathy from state governments over the years, which has affected the successive central finance commissions in recommending appropriate. That means apathy. Apathy would mean administrative issues here. It is obviously they originate because of the political attitude. But the point here is that we are talking about the administrative issues, the way they keep records, the way they do their surveys, because the SFCs come in here, the UFC come in here, but things are linked. Okay, so again something related to Finance Commission. Next, even if all the states combine together, they cannot have their way in decision making in the GST Council unless the union agrees to it. So, contemporary developments like GST. Right? Next, the Speaker of the State Assembly has assumed a significant role in formations and dissolutions of government, something that we are seeing. Examine under the circumstances of the coalition governments. So, the role of Speaker. So, now you see, even in the present context, Speaker, state government, majority, these issues are in news. The office of the Chief Minister, what if the Chief Minister is arrested? Recently, 2 Chief Ministers were arrested. Right? One was the most honest man on earth, or is claimed to be the most honest man on earth. Right? So he was also arrested. So the point is power of arrest vis-a-vis center and states. Right? Apart from that, also the speakers with regard to role, we have seen in Maharashtra, in Chhattisgarh, in Karnataka, the role of the speaker is important. So, your judgments, case laws, SR Bamai judgment, Sarkaria Commission, Punchi Commission, all of them matter. But please understand, while the content will be taken from polity, the logic should be administrative. If you see, all of you will get some marks in these units for the reason that a lot of polity is there, and you any which way go through polity for prelims, for mains, etc. But the brownie points will be fetched by only those people who are able to provide that administrative color, because this is public administration. Next, the role of the governor is of a sagacious counselor, mediator and arbitrator rather than that of an active politician. Again, the governor's office is a favorite. Okay, so governor, finance commission, these are the favorite areas, federalism. Next, as constitutionally mandated body, the finance commission stands at the center of the fiscal federalism. Evaluate the role of finance commission in ensuring just and equitable resource sharing among the states and the union. The problem with these questions is that everybody has an answer to them. So to outshine is a difficult task. Next, Chief Secretary is the chief communication link between the state and the central government. Again, the role of Chief Secretary. Indian federal structure largely symmetric, albeit with some asymmetric features. Examine the status of state and union territory through the principles of weighted and differentiated equality in India. Next, analyze the specific areas of controversy with regards to union-state financial relation, particularly in the context of one nation, one tax policy. So one theme is coming up. So this theme is one nation, one tax. Similarly, there was this GST. Now the theme can be Niti Aayog. Theme can be one nation, one election. Examine the role of central government in adjudicating disputes relating to the water of interstate rivers. So something which is again emanating from federalism. Next, the recommendations of the National Finance Commissions are more norms based than the need. In the light of this statement, analyze the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission. So right now if you see, we are looking at 16th Finance Commission. So I hope you will have some idea about 16th FC. Next, is it true that Finance Commission has been lending financial strength to local bodies in India? This aspect. Last but not the least, there shall be Council of Ministers with Chief Minister as the head of the state to aid and advise the governor in the exercise of his functions, except the constitutional provision is being intensively debated nowadays. Discretionary powers. Governor. So if I take the so-called hot hero topics, federalism in its all aspects, Finance Commission, Chief Secretary, Office of Governor. Right? So these are the essence, so as to say, of this particular unit. Hanji, understood? Understood? Understood these aspects? So what we'll be doing is, we'll try and adopt a unique approach to cover these units, wherein we'll be going through 4 rounds. Round 1 will touch upon all of them, and with every round we will go to a greater level of sophistication. I hope you all understand that I will not be telling you the functions of the Chief Secretary. I will not be telling you that, okay, this is Article 356, this is Governor, etc., etc. Right? What we'll be doing is, we'll be going through a protracted process of analysis and detailing out the perspectives that will help you all. ठीक है जी? So are we in agreement of all of this? Right? So have you drawn this? These things are covered. ठीक है? I deliberately use red and green pen so that some connections and things can be made. Yes. But you should not link. That is more on the political philosophy. I mean, the governor's role won't come much when the union decides to break down a state into 2 or merge a state. Governor comes into the picture when the state exists. Oh, those are sporadic. Deal it within GS, internal security of insurgency, vociferous tendencies, all those things, but not required. Yes, in that sense, when we took the priority order, the unity and integrity, then the democracy, and then the social revolution sort of the thing, the Austrian philosophy that we took up. That's a separate thing. But with these units, hardcore, we are looking at the structural, functional, from where the authority is flowing, what is the nature of the authority, centralization, decentralization, coordination, communication, collaboration, facilitation, right? All those things. So do keep in mind that what unit are we dealing with. Also, with regards to things like Pragati, etc., see, you do programs and policies as, you would have seen what are the features of Manrega, Jal Jeevan Mission, right, or the latest policies which are there, be it education policy, health policy, right, EV policy. So those things can be asked here. Because in public policy paper 1, largely it will be theory. So it is here where the practical aspects will be asked. Right. So should I erase this? Now, with regards to the union and state administration, first let us take up union. You all are aware that when we look at union administration, we are looking at the three pillars, that is executive, legislature, judiciary. Now you see, all of them have an administrative setup of their own, right? As well as they exercise accountability and control over the administration in general. Executive more directly, legislature indirectly, and especially in cases of delegated legislation through committees, right? Judiciary when needed, but phenomena like judicial activism etc. are increasing, where the judiciary is not only venturing into the administrative domain, not only guiding it, monitoring it, holding it to account, controlling it, but also mandating it. Okay. So the executive looks after the day-to-day functioning. And in that sense, administration is more intimately wedded to the executive than the other two pillars. Okay. And it is the executive which has the democratic mandate to actually run the affairs. And hence, the efficiency of the government actually is based on how, in a big picture, all these three are organized, the way they functions. Also, more importantly, the executive itself. How best the executive can implement the policies. Now, obviously, you are aware that there would be executive policies, and then there would be policies which will require higher levels of legitimization, that is laws, for which there is the legislature. Okay? So your president, vice president, prime minister, council of minister, governor, governor general, attorney general, these are there. With regards to president, you have various articles, and the role of the presidents and the powers and functions have been there, but the legislative powers, financial powers, judicial powers, right, all of them are there. Military, diplomatic, emergency powers are there. But you see, the President of India, and since we are on to the humanistic element, we will have to see who actually holds the authority, right? Because the authority is vested in the position, but the exercise of that authority depends on the individual manning that position. So with regards to the appraisal of the office of the president, there are multiple views. Some call the president as merely a rubber stamp, right? Some call that the president is not just a rubber stamp, he has substantial power. So in the Republican setup, the place of the president, and I repeat, in the Republican setup, the place of the president is almost synonymous to the crown in the UK, which is in a monarchical setup, constitutional monarchy. All the actions which are performed by the executive are performed in the name of the president. Okay? There are arguments vis-a-vis the consideration, reconsideration, veto, pocket veto, that is there. Also, the comparison between the office of the president and governor. the president rule and the impeachment. Okay? So, experts argue that there are various powers which the president enjoys. For example, under Article 74, there is this aid idea of the Council of Ministers, etc. Says it's not binding on the president. But after after 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, it becomes binding. So that is why you see in the initial eras, when Prasad Saab was the president, he used to frequently disagree with Pandit Nehru. Yes, personality, but that power was there. 42nd became binding. 44th made some changes that the president can return for reconsideration, but if even after reconsideration the same advice is tendered, the president will have to agree. So the 44th was given as a safety valve. 44 provided a safety valve there. Okay, but you see, in the place of the constitutional morality, where the president is considered, because the oath of the president is to protect the Constitution of India, when president sends the advice for reconsideration, you will see that very rarely the executive will assert itself, because that's a signal, and it is not an act of two people dealing. It's the whole administration. It gets media spotlight, it gets the questions from the opposition, right? So it itself is a signal. So it's like, wielding that weapon just to ward off the threat, not actually using it, but just wielding it, that look boss, this is not right, and just pull out the sword. Not threaten anybody, but pull out the sword. So this is akin to that. Okay. Also, there are certain discretionary powers which are conferred, in which he does not have to consult the Council of Ministers. Okay. So that is there. Now, if you see a survey of the office of the president ever since it has come about, the president, like I said, has often disagreed. And it was essentially Dr. Rajendra Prasad Saab, who said that the president is not a rubber stamp like the British Crown. Because the president of India is elected and not hereditary. The president of India is the head of a federal state. Therefore, he will have to look for both the union as well as the state. You would see that the opposition parties would go petition the president. That's a symbolic gesture. Okay? While there is a procedure of impeachment of the president, there is no such procedure that exists for the monarch. Okay? So that is there. Similarly, we have seen multiple acts where the president has asserted himself. For example, President R. Venkata Raman said that President of India is like that emergency lamb. Remember these quotes, because that will help. With regards to postal bill, Gyani Zail Singh. With regards to multiple other acts, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, right? President Pranab Mukherjee, President K.R. Narayanan. There are multiple instances. With regards to position of the Prime Minister, it is very clear that the coalition regimes often determine the strength of the Prime Minister, also the incumbent. So there are multiple examples from Chaudhary Charan Singh to Indira Gandhi, from Indira Gandhi to Chaudhary Charan Singh to individuals like Narsingh Rao, I.K. Gujral, but Narsingh Rao splendidly ran a full term in spite of being in minority in the house. Right. So all of those things are there. That is something that is part of the literature, and I will not get into it much. Similar is the case of the Parliament. My idea is to focus on the structural, functional notions. Okay, so for example, when you will see books like Aribam and etc., they will talk about this was the golden phase, etc. That is good for shoshebazi and for showbuzz. Okay, but more importantly, we will have to look at the structural, functional aspects of the idea reforms, judicial reforms, what are the measures that are being taken, the role of the committees, the role of speaker, etc. Okay. So, if we look at this, similar is the case with PMO, right? More focus is on the secretariat, directorate system, because that is the core administration that we are dealing with. So you see, it was initially the British who followed the secretariat and directorate system. This forkish system with two, ends. And this system was carried on because structurally we took this split system into our own polity. Why? Because the idea was based on dichotomy. So the secretariat used to be the expert house of the policy matters, whereas directorate was into execution. Generally you will see that the generalist officers manning the secretariat, whereas the specialist officers manning the directorate, because it is the implementing agency. Also, the personnel management happens at the directorate level. So it's more of a line and staff arrangement. So what will you need? You need cooperation, collaboration, coordination. But you see the powers differ. The broad policy or the Lakshman Rekha of the policy is decided by the secretariat. The directorate has to work within it. Now, that is the division based on dichotomy. Now, there are functional divisions. Cut to Taylor, Gulick, Arvik, Fayol, right? Bring in concepts like span of control, etc. Functional division. That is with regards to ministries and departments. So, ministry deals with a broad sector. Now, we have seen ministries changing names, changing hands, changing scope. So, whenever the government wants to emphasize something more, it will create a separate ministry. For example, Ayush was for a very long time under the health ministry. But since the government wants to emphasize it, give it a separate strength, they have created now a ministry of Ayush. Similarly, if government wants to underemphasize something, 1. 2. If the government thinks that there are multiple entities which needs synergy among them, they are brought under, so the ministries are merged, demerged, and they are brought under a common ministry in the form of departments. So the ministry is generally led by a minister, and each ministry will have one or more departments. Similarly, the ministry can have bureaus. For example, Ministry of Civil Aviation. Right? It can have other bureaus within that, commissions or smaller executive, advisory, managerial or other entities. And the ministries are subordinate to cabinet. Ministries are subordinate to the cabinet and the prime minister. Why? Because it is the prime minister which presides over the cabinet. Okay? Whereas department is concerned, it is a functional unit, a primary unit within a ministry. Or if there is a very specialized department that can be kept directly under the prime minister. For example, space, nuclear, sciences, energy, etc. Okay. So, for example, Ministry of Finance has Department of Revenue, Department of Expenditure, Department of Financial Services, etc. So, while the ministry is headed by a public representative. Why? Because a democratic accountability aspect. By a public representative, that is a member of the legislature. These things are true even at the state level. But at the administrative machinery, who sits at the top? A secretary. So the political head is the public representative of the ministry, and the secretary to the government of India is the administrative head. Also, you will see that there would be more than one department under a ministry, and if that department warrants a sizable paraphernalia under it, each department will be headed by a secretary, but the senior most amongst those will be the secretary called or will be designated as the secretary of the ministry. For example, the finance secretary. Okay. Similarly, there are attached offices that provide assistance. Okay. Similarly, there are boards and commissions like advisory board, regulatory commissions which are there. For example, you have TRAI. Okay. Similarly, you have other agents. Sorry? Right. All those rural recruitment boards are there. Similarly, you have railway board, for example. Okay. Because that is providing it a quasi corporate structure to the railway ministry for the commercial operations. Now, you have independent commissions, for example, Finance Commission, Election Commission, etc. With regards to Ministry of Finance, we can say Central Board of Direct Taxes, Central Board of Indirect Taxes. Okay. Similarly, if we look at the state government and topics like union-state relations, I told you that there are trends like competitive, cooperative and collaborative. Okay, and the center state relationships have multiple dimensions. Okay, some of the scholars have called Indian federalism as purely federal, some have called quasi-federal, some have called federalism with a centralizing bias. All these things are there. So I'm not inclined to get into the polity aspect of it. Okay, so fiscal federalism, cooperative federalism. Nowadays, if we can see the green federalism regarding the climate policies, regarding the electronic vehicles. Also, as part of the federalism, we have to see the administrative relationships. In this light, the executive power of governor, the list system, all those things. Similarly, the legislative relations vis-a-vis that if the majority of the states decide on a particular action, the Rajya Sabha has to pass it, then it has to, all those things. The finance relation vis-a-vis Niti Aayog, Finance Commission, right? All those things have to be seen. Okay. I hope you all know the SR Bommai case, right? Sarkaria Commission, Punchi Commission. Okay, so I'm not getting into it either. Vis-a-vis Finance Commission, just read it vis-a-vis the latest postulates which are there. And Election Commission, not Election Commission, I'm sorry. With regards to Office of Governor, the recent trends which are there. Okay, so not pretty much to understand from the polity point of view. I'm just trying to actually turn the leaves so that we remember the topics that we have to touch upon. Now, coming to the structural aspects. Vis-a-vis the union. Right.
That can be an administrative.
Right. So that is the administrative powers of governor. No, that is there. That is very much there. That he has a discretionary power with regards to the autonomous council. For example, you have things like similar things in Darjeeling and other Gorkha Land autonomous council and all that. That is there. Now the central secretariat. So you see, under the Indian Constitution, while the executive is largely in charge of the day-to-day affairs, the governance happens at three levels: center, state and local. Okay? And it needs an organizational setup consisting of various ministries, departments, secretariats, cabinet secretariat, prime minister's office, so on and so forth. In this setup, the central secretariat actually is of vital importance. You see, the government's actions are taken in the name of the president, but president is merely a constitutional head, and it is on the aid and advice of the prime minister and the cabinet, the council of ministers, that the president act. These ministers cannot actually perform their task without this sort of a secretarial assistance. They require administrative assistance. So with regards to the structural aspect, yes, the government of India, if we look at it as a meta organization, it has been divided into various ministries and departments, which in a way together constitute what we known as, so the summation entity of all those ministries and departments is known as the Central Secretariat. And the Secretariat, within the Central Secretariat, is the organizational paraphernalia that helps or assists the ministers in discharging their duties. Secretariat literally would mean office of the secretary. So the word has been derived from the British lingo, because now obviously the minister sits at the top. Okay. And it is the secretary who is the principal advisor to the minister concerned. And hence, you have the minister, you have the secretary, and you need an organizational paraphernalia below that secretary in order to discharge the work. So it was before how the British executive used to run, but after independence the ministers came, but the paraphernalia remained. Okay? But now we see that the term secretariat comes to the use as nothing but a minister's office, right? So secretariat as a structure is the legacy of the Raj. There was a secretariat in India and the office of Governor General. So the duty of that office was to fulfill the requisite information, provide that requisite information for the formulation of various policies. So it was Lord Cornwall, or Cornwallis as a lot of people would call him, who organized and strengthened the secretariat system. So that was in a way the administrative reform in its most infancy. So he created an office which was called as the Secretary General. General, why do you think in Indian administrative setup you have these terminologies? Postmaster General, Secretary General. Why?
They were above the small ones.
No, because largely India was conquered on the back of the military power. So the military terminology stayed with the administration just to emphasize that superiority. That is why the Secretary General office was created, which obviously later transformed into what we presently know as the office of the Chief Secretary, because at the state level. Okay. And then this office was vested with certain powers by Lord Wellesley. Okay. So when the British government came in the 18th century, the government got crystallized. There was a Governor General, councillors, and a secretariat system assisting these people. Okay, but it was the Second World War which made the secretariat a real powerhouse of the policy framing. Because you need active administrative actions, because the world was at war. So the crown needed support from the colonies. There were scarcities, there were other manpower, logistics issues that were there. And you see, the task of the policy and execution were separated. And the concept of deputation comes in. Lord Curzon introduces it. Why? Because you see, now you would have heard that, okay, he is on deputation there, or she is working on deputation to map the exigencies. Now enter contingency theories, situational theories. And it then branches out into a regular administrative deputation to fill a vacuum for a temporary basis or to acquire that cross expertise on a temporary basis, and one strands move towards things like OSD, official on special duty. Okay, and gradually as the nature of the administration expanded, the secretariat expanded, acquiring more powers. You can simply Google and look at the portfolios and ministers in, let us say, 1952 and see it in 2024. While you will find a certain amount of constancy with regards to, let us say, Ministry of Finance, Home, Defense, but see, so many new ministries have come up. Okay, so it helps the ministers in policy making process, framing rules and regulations, financial management and budgeting, coordination, cooperation with state governments and other entities within the central government, helps in policy appraisal, policy monitoring. So it serves as the nucleus of the ministry. It is also an entity which fosters interministerial coordination. It is the secretariat which is the think tank of the policy. Also, it is a primary channel of communication between the states and other institutions which are there. For example, Niti Aayog, Finance Commission. Okay? So this is how the structure goes. You have the ministry, then you have the department, then the department is further divided into wings, then division, then branch and section. So you would have seen that some of your friends, or I do not know, some of you are giving the exam and want to become a section officer. So department, you see, ministry is headed by a minister, department is headed by a secretary or additional secretary or special secretary, wing, joint secretary, additional secretary, depending upon the scope and size. Division by a director or a deputy secretary. Branch, under secretary. Section, section officer. So the senior most secretary would coordinate the work of other secretaries and would be called the ministry's secretary officially. He will represent the ministry wherever the secretary of the ministry is required, in all national and international forums. Okay, so this is the following personnel management process. So the hierarchy, if you see, we'll move it like this, from SO to secretary. So from under secretary to secretary, you will see that they are the class 1 officers or the group A officers, either direct recruitees or even promotees. Okay? And since they are belonging to largely, if it's not a specialized ministry, IAS, they are on deputation, central deputation. Because primarily they are wedded to their cadres after recruitment. Okay? And they have the experience from the field. They have worked on the field. So after rendering their services, they are repatriated to their parent cadre. This is what we call as the tenure system. So for example, if you are into AGM UT cadre, there are mandatory services that you will have to perform in Northeast and Island territories. So it was Curzon, Lord Curzon, who introduced this tenural system. Okay? Why he introduced that? Because he said that, Curzon said that you can govern India either from Delhi or Simla or Calcutta, but it will be governed by people who have their feet on the plains. So these are the people who have served in districts. Okay, they had the ground experience. Okay? You see, even Simon Commission supported this idea. Cut to reforms now. The transfer and posting policy, Civil Services Board. There was in news the Civil Services Board in Delhi regarding the transfers and postings. Why this is important? This rotation system is important so that between the HQ and field, line and staff, okay, secretariat and directorate, there is a constant exchange. So that they can actually take up responsibilities and based on their experiences, they can bring about the improvement in the administration. Now, the first ARC. So all of you have largely talked about the second ARC, right? Let me give you some 2 cents from the first ARC as well, because that is important. That is also something which is largely not documented in many books. So this tenure system was also endorsed by the first ARC, and it advocated for the removal of the barriers which are hindering the smooth flow of personnel between secretariat and field. Now, if you look at why tenural security is important, so that tangible change can be brought. The policy can be seen from start to finish. Also, it provides a performance criteria as well. Also, it will benefit the center-state relations, federalism. It will help base or frame national policy based on realities. Also, the state, when the officials will go back, will get official who has a pan-national vision, so who has broader ideas. Also, it gave the generalist officers to gain experience and expertise in different environments, thereby making a break from the monotony of the service. It strengthens the administrative unity and ensures independence of civil services. But there are arguments against the tenurial system. They say that nowadays the administrative work has become very specialized in character. Right? Again, the generalist versus specialist debate enter. Also, they say that the experience in districts are no more relevant. Why? Because when we started with this tenurial system, what used to happen at the center and at the ground level, the nature of activities had a sort of a semblance. Just the scope differed. But now the activities at the center and the state are completely divergent. But no, sir, you will counter this. Development administration. Okay. So again, this is something that the district officers' experience might not be sufficient. Also, you see, the district officers during the colonial time had limited functions. So they used to tour the districts. They were away from the political interference. Now, if you see the district collector, he is today, busy with so many functions that he barely gets to see the time outside the districts. There might be a garbage dump just near the office of district collector and he won't come to know about it. Right? So this is effective vis-a-vis center also. Also, these very same district officials work as part of the secretarial system in the state governments as well. Okay. But nonetheless, it is an important aspect, but we'll have to take it as a caveat where it does not apply to all government departments. For example, in audit and account, post and telegraph, customs, etc., they are highly specialized. So therefore, you see the under secretary, joint secretary, additional secretary, these posts are being filled from the IRS. From these specialized services, not the IAS. Just the secretary posts are largely being filled from the IAS. Okay? So to support the Central Secretariat, its own service arm, that is the Central Secretariat Service, which specializes in the secretarial assistance. So the Central Secretariat Service, Central Secretariat Stenographer Service, Central Secretariat Clerical Service, so that it can provide a battery of manpower is there. Okay. Similarly, let us look at the Cabinet Secretary. You see, cabinet is one of the most powerful multi-member bodies that the country has. And obviously this cabinet, to prepare agenda, to carry out the administrative tasks, routine functions, will need a body that we call as the Cabinet Secretariat. And it is this cabinet which is at the apex. Because there might be multiple ministries, but not all ministries might be part of the cabinet. So this is headed by Cabinet Secretary, who is largely a confidant of the Prime Minister. He enjoys the trust of the Prime Minister. And it is largely the senior most civil servant of the country. Till now, all the cabinet secretaries have been the IAS. Similarly, you see a parallel structure exists at the state level, wherein you have the chief secretary. But in this case, Chief Secretary is almost synonymous. He has a physical work there because he is the boss of all the secretaries which are there. In this case, Cabinet Secretary is not the boss of all the secretaries. Right. Also, Chief Secretary is the principal advisor to the CM. Whereas the Prime Minister, apart from the cabinet structure and the Cabinet Secretary, also has a Prime Minister's office which has a separate administrative paraphernalia headed by the Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister. Not to say that you do not have Principal Secretary to the Chief Minister, but Chief Secretary and Cabinet Secretary being the highest officials at the center, at the state and the center level respectively. Okay? So the main function of the Cabinet Secretary is to assist the Council of Ministers, the Cabinet. He is the chairman of the Committee of Chief Secretary. So if this is 1, this is N, he is the chairman of the Committee of Chief Secretary. I hope you are able to visualize the structure, how it is there. Okay. And it is through his office, the forum where the Chief Secretaries, the bureaucrats interact, exchange information, right? Also, he is considered as the head of the civil services. He is party to all the meetings of the cabinet, and he also oversees that various ministries. So in that sense, he acts as a coordination center, nerve center with various ministries so that the cabinet decisions are implemented. Also, he helps, aids and advises the Prime Minister. So he is like that ear and eye with regards to various ministry. Okay. So with regards to the Cabinet Secretary, a younger committee was formed. See, all of you know this, right? But the point is that have you heard about a youngers committee? Heard? But things like these add sort of a depth to your answer. Okay. So a younger committee was examining this, and it actually talked about that the Cabinet Secretary should be the highest officer of the highest rank. He should be entrusted as the head of Cabinet Secretariat with positive functions of securing coordination as well as timely and effective action by all the departments of the Government of India in all the matters in which Cabinet as a whole or Prime Minister is interested. So based on this recommendation, the office of Cabinet Secretary got institutionalized. And it was the first ARC which fixed the term for 3 years. While the Cabinet Secretary provide eyes and ears to the Prime Minister on the affairs of the central government, Cabinet Secretary is not a watchdog. It exercises a staff function, not a line function with regards to the ministers. The duty is to help but not oversee. Okay. Similarly, the institution of cabinet is nothing but a closed system of a coterie of individuals, ministers, elite theory of decision making. So it is the cabinet लिंक कर पा रहे हो ना इसे? Okay, so there are various committees: Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs, Economic Affairs, Appointments Committee, Committee on Parliamentary Affairs, Security, etc. Okay, now let us come to the another hero topic that we have, that is the PMO. So I hope all of you know it was known as Prime Ministerial Secretariat, then it came to be known as PMO, wherein it is being closely looked at with the personality of the Prime Minister. The centralizing, decentralizing, tight or loose, rigid or flexible approach has been closely associated with the incumbent. ये सब तो पता है, ठीक है. But often we see that the role of the PMO and the Cabinet Secretary is being juxtaposed, compared. Okay. Like I said, it is an administrative paraphernalia to assist the Prime Minister. So it started with Prime Ministerial Secretariat, but it has expanded in scope. If you look at PMO, it has in status equivalent to the Department of Government of India. This is very important. How many of you knew this? That the status is equal to the department in the Government of India? It is as per the allocation of business rules. So while it serves as a link between the Prime Minister and the other ministers, but also with President, Governors, Chief Ministers, Foreign Representative, etc. PMO is headed by Principal Secretary to Prime Minister. Again, a very senior civil servant and has a great influence vis-a-vis decision making. The Principal Secretary is assisted by other secretaries, additional secretaries, joint secretaries, directors, junior officials. I hope you understand that the Prime Minister himself is in charge of many ministries. Okay, during the time of Panditji, Panditji was also the de facto foreign minister. Similarly, there are crucial departments like atomic energy, space, which come under the Prime Minister. So it helps discharge the Prime Minister his or her duties in the various dimensions, whether public responsibilities, political responsibilities, parliamentary responsibilities, etc. Okay? There is also a Minister of State or Minister, the Prime Minister will himself hold the charge, as well as there can be MOS. So you have seen the position MOS in the Prime Ministerial office, etc. Generally the DOPT, all those departments are there. Obviously, ever since the time of Mrs. Gandhi, and I am talking about Indira Gandhi, right, not the other Mrs. Gandhi. Of course, she also allegedly held a very strong grip on the PMO, except for the fact that she was never the PM. Okay. So ever since Mrs. Gandhi, Indira Gandhi, we see that the scope of operations, levels of sophistication, powers, functions, prestige of the PMO have expanded. And therefore, it puts it seemingly in conflict with another powerful entity which is there, that is the Cabinet Secretariat. But see, if you will see the roles and functions, they are completely different, and hence there is no antagonism. But the centralizing tendency of the PMO is dangerous. Over centralization can lead to problems in administration. The logic is something that you know. Okay? Now, coming to other aspects mentioned in the syllabus, attached offices. So they provide executive direction. For example, the Border Security Force is nothing but an attached office to the Ministry of Home Affairs. So they provide the technical information for policy matters as well as executive direction for policy implementation. So in this sense, they play a dual role. And therefore they are considered as field organization. Whereas the subordinate offices are responsible for actual implementation, execution of policies, programs, and they operate under the attached offices. So generally a technical official will hold it. Also, with regards to boards and commissions, I just want to point out one thing, that their status depends on the nature, whether they are executive, statutory or constitutional. For example, if I look at election commission, it's a constitutional body. Okay, if I look at a pay commission, it would be an executive body. Right, if I look at the National Commission for Women, it would be a statutory or legislative body. So not legislative, statutory. Okay, so that is something which is dependent upon their status. So do keep in mind that. Okay. Now coming to the state. Secretariat system, the moorings remains the same. Largely the formulation of policy, programs, budgeting, controlling, okay, conversing with and helping the legislature, spokespersons of the government. Right. Now this brings me to another very interesting office, which is of Chief Secretary. A unique position. While the closest analogous would be the Cabinet Secretary, but if we look at the scope of powers, the Chief Secretary is even more powerful, obviously in their own jurisdiction, more powerful than the Cabinet Secretary. So Chief Secretary is the chief of the Secretariat of every state. He heads the civil services of every state. He works as an interdepartmental coordinator and gives general guidance to the officers. Communication link between the state government and the union government and with the other state governments. So he is not equal to other secretaries. He is not primus inter pares. Rather, he is the chief of the secretaries at the state level. Therefore, you see an interesting thing. While the tenural system is practiced for most of the HODs or head of the departments, the office of Chief Secretary has not been subjected to the tenural system. So either that person will retire as Chief Secretary or will move to the central government to take up some responsibility. So in actual practice, the way Chief Secretary operates in state, no analogous exists at the central level. Because the way you have the central secretariat at the union level, you have no such entity at the state level. Okay? So chief secretary acts as the cabinet secretary in the states plus more. So he will perform all the roles of the cabinet secretary as cabinet secretary performs at the center. The chief secretary will perform at the state. But there are more powers. He heads the civil services at the state. He is also the chief advisor to the chief minister. He controls the entire secretariat. He can make transfers, postings, etc. He is also secretary to the cabinet. Wherever other matters which are for which there is no secretary, the chief secretary is the de facto secretary, which is clearly not the case of cabinet secretary. Also, he is the head of a large number of committees at the state level, the chief coordinator, the chief troubleshooter on the administrative matters in the states. While it is important, or it is suggested that the chief minister appoints the chief secretary based on his own considerations, it is advisable that he consults the union ministry, but this consultation is not mandatory. Right. Often that we have seen, whenever there is some unholy practice being alleged, often the chief secretary is rounded up with the political head as well. Obviously, generally the chief secretaries are the members of the services. The post of the chief secretary is equivalent. He might not be the senior most official in all the states, but the post is generally equated to the secretary of, or the secretary to the government of India. Okay? And this is by the recommendation of the first ARC. There is no fixed term. But first ARC mentioned that the tenure should be 3 to 4 years. But this suggestion has not been accepted. So largely you see that the tenure of the chief secretary is coterminous with the chief minister. The moment chief minister goes, chief secretary takes a posting somewhere and say Ram Ram. Okay. Then there is directorate. I told you directorate are the implementing agencies. They are the executive agencies which are located outside the secretariat. And the relationship between the secretariat and directorate is same as headquarter field, staff and line. Now, often when we look at the local governments, we find that the state, because why am I bringing this up? Because of the aspect of State Finance Commission coming into the picture. And often the local governments are meted out the stepmotherly treatment by these state government. Okay, and therefore you have to look into the composition of State Finance Commission. Largely they are not very routinized, and therefore there is a problem. Okay. Now, this basically completes the first iteration or the summary of the union and the state government. Now, coming to the second overview, wherein we'll be adding more details, taking up more sophisticated analysis. Let us do a critical appraisal with regards to the issues in central administration. Issues in central administration. Now, tell me, the single most important purpose of administration is to bring about good governance. So the manner, the processes, the methods, the procedures in which the power is exercised should be for the good, for the social, economic interest, for the balanced progress. And thus administration without the idea of the good governance or the quality of governance is akin to an inefficient organization. The purpose of the colonial regime was very limited. That was to maintain the law and order. But the situation has changed. There are development functions, and the civic administration is expected to perform these variety of functions. But still, poverty, multiple social evils, non-development continue to hold. There are insurgency, where I term them as governance deficits. So we are almost concerned about fiscal deficit, balance of payment deficit, this deficit. But what about the governance deficit that exists? Because this administration, which is highly Weberian, I hope you see the idea of functional leadership, span of control, line and staff, division of work, all of that you see. But this is not working. So more contingency, situational, matrix approach is needed. That is why you see that an executive agency like Planning Commission was given away, and a new agency like Niti Aayog, which could work on the meta policy level, was brought about. Okay. So the administration, while it has made significant strides, is to be blamed for a lot of these issues. And it is the politicians as well as the administrator who are responsible. Now, technically, wastage of resources, inefficiency, ineffectiveness, not following the principles of economy, not proper division of work, not proper source of authority, irrational distribution of power, lack of accountability and control. Okay? So the major role of central administration is twofold: implementation and planning. You see, central administration is everywhere. But the proof of the efficacy of this system lies in the outcome. If you look at the central administration, central secretariat, the role is to make policy, to assist the minister. If the so-called legal, rational, impartial civil service is not able to aid and advise the minister, or they are succumbing to the whims and fancies of the ministers under the political compulsions because of the bureaucratic political nexus, then it is doing a disservice to the country by bringing up the defective policy. And hence it's a failure of administration. The failure of a policy traces back to the failure of the central administration. So corruption, inefficiency, non-accountability. In some cases we see how if the minister is a dumb fellow, then the officials are far more powerful than the ministers. So again, the bureaucratic elite theory captures inward orientation, supersedes the public interest. Goal displacement happens. Okay, apart from this, this also makes of a value crisis. Values of honesty, impartiality, right? All those values remain absent. Okay, coming to more with regards to the state administration. I want to actually highlight the role of Sarkaria Commission here, because federal system is something which is very important for our analysis. You see, whenever we look at the center-state relations, it has more often than not been alleged that the federal system is more biased towards the center. Often it is said that India is largely a unitary state with some federal features. While Article 1, we are not federal as, or our flavor of federalism is not the same as the American or the United States. India, that is Bharat, Article 1 is something that is related to and which conclusively said that India is a union of states. But because of the administrative legislative relations, the central government dominates over the state governments. Especially when we see that the governments in the center states do not belong to the friendly camp. Okay? So, amidst this allegations in the early 80s, a commission was appointed that is known as Sarkaria Commission to view the center-state relations and to give recommendations. But again, the same principles. Unity and integrity is not to be tampered with. Not to give so much autonomy that the states tend to become independent. Okay? But the overarching vision was to ensure the welfare of the people, so that the existing administrative arrangement between the center and state can be altered in a manner that they create a far more efficient system. Okay? So taxation is is one important issue, and something with GST, while it provides ease of doing business, so-called ease of doing business, rationalization of taxes, but the Sarkaria Commission said that the taxes should remain in the concurrent list. And the state government must be consulted for modifications into concurrent list. Okay. With regards to governor, the commission recommended that the chief minister of the concerned state should be consulted before the governor is appointed. Also, some suggested that it was suggested that the member of the ruling party at the center should not be appointed as the governor of the state. The governor cannot dismiss the state government if the chief minister enjoys the majority in the assembly. Also, the governor must not interfere in the formation of government in the state. Okay? Also, mandating to act on the advice of the Council of Ministers. So, you would have seen the cases of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, etc., where the governor was keeping the bill or reserving the bill for consideration of the president. The Sarkaria Commission says that no, it should be similar like we have in the union, that he must act as per the aid and advice of the state government. Okay? So, these are some of the recommendations from the Sarkaria Commission. I hope all of you are looking at the aspect of Sarkaria Commission, Punchi Commission, etc. Right? So just flip through the pages and let me know if there are any doubts. You know the syllabus. I have already discussed the so-called hot topics before we move ahead. Hanji. No, don't read first ARC. No point. Right now, do not read first ARC. Whatever material that you have collated as part of your notes, wherever you have put that or whatever enrichment I am providing, that is sufficient. Don't go for first ARC now. Okay. It will be very difficult. Right. You will be doing it at the cost of something else, which I do not want. I am giving you these tidbits and points because largely you know central and state administration. The idea is how we can somehow squeeze 5-10 more marks. That's the simple idea. Now, through the third cycle, I will be talking about certain very pointed things. This will be like the last final coat of varnish. Okay. So, Central Secretariat is the conglomeration of various ministries and departments, but it is a single unit. You see, there is an interesting observation which some of you might not have made. While we can talk about Home Secretary, Health Secretary, Education Secretary, that is the common lingo that we might use in our interaction. But all of these people are whom? They are not secretary to a ministry, they are secretary to the Government of India. So interdisciplinary matters are supposed to be consulted with other departments before a final call is taken. Of course, if at the secretary level things cannot reach a conclusion, it is elevated or escalated to a higher level, interministerial or the cabinet levels. But we will have to understand that secretaries are the secretaries to the government as a whole and not to a particular minister. So the idea of central secretariat, two clear principles are there. One, the politico-administration dichotomy, separating the policy function from implementation. So while the policy function has been separated from implementation, but still you will find many areas, because the meta policy is framed at this level, but sub policies are getting framed. So a clear division of work here is absent. And that is what the second ARC will recommend, that you should actually simplify this. Also, it emphasizes on tenurial system. So it is the Act of 1919 that actually brings in the crystallization further. Okay, so that is something which is to note. What are the issues? I am giving you just the pointers so that you can elaborate them. If you don't understand a pointer, you can ask. Overstaffing, centralization, secretariat, directorate conflict, non-adherence to the split system. You see, why am I saying the split system? Often you see secretariat will exercise influence. Haji, we are speaking from headquarters, right? Do this, do that, do this, do that. So it often ventures or encroaches upon the executive domain. So what happens? The prestige, the sanctity of the implementing agencies go down. So the following of split system is happening just in letter, but not in spirit. So the clear criteria of accountability and control should be established at both the levels, so that the secretariat can exercise that necessary amount of accountability and control, but without being interventionist. Okay? It is something that is the epitome of generalist supremacy. Now what happens? See, the central secretariat is there. It is the power repository. Thereby the repository for a lot of authority as well. It is not very much interested in delegating that power and authority. That leads to delays in implementation. So, for example, if a very small policy is there, that if somebody does not have a document, they can verify their identity through Aadhaar based OTP and submit a declaration on a stamp paper of 10 rupees. That should be fine, but no. The rule says that they will deny that particular person the grant of that certificate or license, etc. I mean, imagine this is something which I am telling from a personal experience where I had to get a certificate, and the official in charge said that, okay, show me your PAN card. And somehow I forgot the PAN card. And what I did, I showed him the DigiLocker. So he had to call 5 or 6 other people of same rank and superior whether this is acceptable. And this I am telling you in Delhi. Government says I had to actually tutor him on the IT Act and the provisions. And then also he was hesitant and he said, give me a written undertaking on a 10 rupee stamp paper. I said, okay, fine, take it. So this is the level. The non-specialization character. While the generalist, supremacy is a problem, the non-specialized character is there. High-handedness. The tenurial system is not often followed. They are burdened with non-essential tasks. Instead of discharging the core function, research, strategy, policy, decision making, duplication of effort and conflict, because clear demarcation and clarification of roles and responsibility is not there. Lack of coordination, disregard for administrative ethics and corruption, lack of modernization. You see, you open the website of Government of India, you will see that still large many officials whose email IDs are given, they are either on Gmail, Yahoo, etc. Note, in spite of the coming up of MIS and other things, Digital India, still there are issues. You look at, forget anything else, you look at the UPSC website on result day. They haven't been able to fix the website. It always gets hanged. Look at the income tax website while filling the ITR. Okay. Also, it is a repository of the conflict. Why? There is a conflict between generalist versus specialist, secretariat versus executive agency, civil servant and minister, attached and subordinate offices, red tape, hierarchy, etc. Now, what are the solutions? The solutions are strict adherence to the split system, like they do in Sweden. Strict adherence to tenurial system, technology. Delegation, decentralization, giving due respect and official place to specialization, outcome orientation, regular staff rationalization. Okay? Now, I am giving you some heads up on the center-state relations, federalism aspect. Just the pointers. Okay? Because when you will work through these heads, at least your answer will be well structured. Administrative relations, center-state administrative relations, directives by the union, delegation of union functions to the states, all India service. Very important next one, deployment of defense and paramilitary forces. interstate council, interstate disputes, Article 356. Financial relations, pay special emphasis on GST. Seventh schedule of the Constitution, grants in aid and loans, borrowing powers, Finance Commission, okay. Now there are various models of center-state relations. This will help you in comparative analysis as well. And please, I haven't talked a lot about the offices of speaker, etc. You can take the leaf from polity, because those answers will be very polity-ish, largely. Okay. So one is called as inclusive authority model. In this inclusive authority model, and we are looking at center state local relations. I am taking the entire spectrum of things together. So in this case, the state and the local governments depend on center for powers based on principle of hierarchy. So what kind of system will it be? It will be a top-down system. So it will be something like this. Center, state, local. Next is the coordinate authority model. See, just a glimpse of these models or figures like these will help you make your answers pabadish. Okay? Wherein the union and state governments are relatively independent, but the local government is dependent upon state government. Now, if you see, by design in India, both of these exist. So if I take this, in reality it is this, but on paper it is something like this. In reality it is like this, but on paper it is something like this. Overlapping authority model. Limited autonomy, cooperative and interdependent bargaining. How? So this was 1, this was 2, this was 3. Let's separate this. This would be something like this. Okay? So you will have center, state, local. This will be center local. This will be state local. No, this will be state local. This will be center state, and this will be center state local. Next comes the networked governance. So while there will be center, state, local governments, there would be corporate sector and civil society and supranational bodies, international bodies. So it will be something like this. Okay? It will be something like this. And then this. So you will have center, state, local, international bodies and the civil society. All of them coming together. Okay? So this will help you provide a structure that in reality it is this by virtue of 73rd, 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, state list, union list, concurrent list, wherein there are bridges, but in reality the center state local relations operate like this, the state local relations operate like this, or how it should be like this. So that will help you provide that sort of a heft in your answers. ठीक है जी? Should I erase this? Okay. With regards to governor, just giving certain pointers. Remember articles 153 to 164. 153 to 164. Controversial areas with regards to governor, summarizing the points. Appointment by the president, pleasure of the president, discretionary powers, okay, assent to the bills, reservation of bills, ordinances, and failure in case of constitutional machinery. So if you will look at Article 155, 156, subclause 1, 163, 166, subclause 3, 200, 201, 213, 356. Judgments. All of you know SR Bamai, but there are more judgments that you can adopt. For example, Kapoor versus State of Punjab, Shamsher Singh versus State of Punjab. Obviously, the Sarkaria Commission and the Punchi Commission are there. Should I erase this? Do one thing. I have talked about the PYQs and I forgot to give the homework today. All the questions that have been asked, previous year's questions, I listed them out. Also, you would have various sources to look at PYQs. I just need the question and the approach in 5 points. Or you can simply draw the skeletal that I will do this. This is the core area and this is how I will explain. This kind of an exercise is needed. So do this as a homework and send it to me so that I can get an idea of your thinking process. All the PYQs. Okay. Again, Article 52 to 59, President, 52 to 59, 61, 72, 74, 75, 85, 86, 87, 123, 127. No, 123, 143. Okay. Few pointers on presidential activism. See, express it like this. Just like we see judicial activism, presidential activism. In 1979, Prime Minister Charan Singh did not enjoyed a parliamentary majority, and he did not summon the parliament at all, and he did not request the president to summon the parliament at all. And since then, the presidents have been more diligent in asking the prime ministers to convene the parliament and prove their majority within a reasonable limit. After the parliament again passes the bill and sends back to the president, there is no limit which the constitution says that the president is obliged to approve the bill. So he withholds the assent indefinitely. That is the pocket veto. President Zail Singh, President Venkataraman have utilized this. Often we saw in the coalition era no clear majority coming in. So in that sense, the president has used the discretion and directed the so-called prime ministerial aspirants to establish their credentials before being invited to the form government. Therefore, the letter of support is taken from various parties and MPs. Also, the regular communique which comes from Rashtrapati Bhavan explaining the rationale, this was of the use of discretionary powers. This was established by President K.R. Narayanan. President Kalam sent back the controversial Office of Profit Bill. Okay. With regards to PMO and Cabinet Secretariat dynamics, some points with regards to PMO and Cabinet Secretariat dynamics. You see, from Nehru onwards, we see with subsequent Prime Minister, the role of the PMO getting stronger. Okay? First time it was Shastri ji who appointed L.K. Jha as the Secretary to the Prime Minister, and therefore the Prime Ministers, from then we see that the Prime Minister office starts commanding a huge influence. Okay, so what's this magazine which is released by the Hindu? I'm not able to recollect the name. Frontline. So I remember many years back, maybe 15 years back or so, there was this article called Bhishma Pitamas of Indian bureaucracy. So So in that L.K. Jha, P.C. Alexander, Brijesh Mishra, all of them were mentioned. Brijesh Mishra. Right. Now why the PMO has emerged as stronger or perceived stronger? Because the government, the Prime Minister as constitutionally thought out role of primus inter pares has acquired far more significance. In the present era, it has become far more personality, individual driven. There is a cult of personality, and the government, instead of a representative cabinet form of parliamentary form of democracy government, the notions of prime ministerial government has emerged. Also globally, the notion of a stronger chief executive has gained currency. Okay, so India cannot actually be perceived to be a latecomer to this, or can be perceived to be a naysayer. Also, the absolute majority governments have rendered the legislative process of accountability and control fractured.
Secretary to PM is chosen by PM.
Right. Ministry of Personnel comes under the Prime Minister. If you look at the philosophy, now link it with the core concept of public administration, NPM, and NPM related reforms. What were those reforms? Managerial reforms. And therefore, you need to carry out these reforms, you need a strong chief executive prime minister. ये नहीं बताया होगा किसी ने. Okay. It also depends heavily on the attitude of the Prime Minister, authoritative, participative. Also, there are challenges such as terrorism, climate change, global shifting order, which requires a centralized leadership. Okay, technological advancement, more proactive foreign policy, globalization, all of it has actually pushed the office of Prime Minister to a far greater prominence. Right, control over the defense and other aspects. Okay, so this is largely what I wanted to convey from the units of center and state administration. Now, what I have told you in the class will not be directly asked. For all practical purposes, the way the trends are there. But the way this has been conveyed, it can greatly elevate the answers that you write. Also in understanding, for example, linking NPM and the active role of the Prime Minister's office. Now, this aspect is something which is not given in much of the literature. Also, with regards to PMO, you all give the same stuff which is given in Arora and Goyal or Aribam, that okay, during Nehru this happened, during Indira Gandhi this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. So this will be a sort of a break from the routine, right? And that was the intent behind this session. I deliberately obscured the details because those details are with you. There is no point in spending a lot of time on that, right? So next we'll be taking up the district administration with some perspective. Along with district administration, in a similar manner we'll be taking the district administration layer by layer. Have you got the concept? Any issues with this? Okay. So we'll be taking it layer by layer, and then subsequently we'll be taking up other units. Rural urban development is something that I will try and club with district administration only, right? And then the plans and priorities, public sector undertakings quickly, and then we'll be moving towards reforms, because I want to give 2 sessions at least on reforms. Okay, so that's all. Thank you.